Hi everybody, this is Sam in my hometown, Quad Cities, USA. There we go. Praise the Lord. Yeah, I'd like to tell you about this petitioner. First, let's talk a little bit about my hometown. We're in Davenport, Iowa. This is Illinois across the river. This is the famous Centennial Bridge. Over here, we have Lock and Dam 14, where the barges all come through. All the grain, all the coal, all the sand comes through, gets shipped onto rail. The far bridge, I don't know if you can see it, in the distance is a rail bridge that opens and closes. And over here is the Rock Island Arsenal, where we still make M1 Abrams tank turret components. But hey, I want to tell you about this gal that wanted me to petition for Greenfield. And I said, what would you like me to sign a petition for? I'm an Iowa voter. And she said, Greenfield would like to run against Joni Ernst for the Senate seat. And here's my first response pertaining to Joni. I said, Joni said if we sent her to Washington, that she knew how to make them squeal. She said she grew up castrating hogs on her Iowa farm. And I said, now this was a young lady, 20 years old maybe, probably a college student, very well spoken, very thoughtful. You know, the reason that people say the Iowa caucuses are not first because they're important, they say they're important because they're first. Here's the Davenport Bank cupola, very famous landmark. Wells Fargo owns it now. But I would say Iowa is important. And you know, there were a lot of interviews last night at the Democratic debate in the caucuses, and everybody, people for Yang, people for Bernie, people for Trump. Amy Klobuchar had a tremendous showing. 3 or 4 buses full came down because, you know, her Senate seat's right across the river, or right across the border in Minnesota. So they came down Interstate 35. Everybody could say, this is why we support this candidate. We support Amy because we think she's electable. She's the best person to run against Trump. The Trump supporters, you know, they were all for Trump. They said, come on, come on. We want 4 more years. And they had reasons. The Yang supporters were very outspoken about why Yang should be allowed to debate, why he really should have been on the stage, and why the Democratic establishment didn't want him. And this gal that asked me to petition was very much like that. She had reasons, she had thoughts. This is one of our favorite places for eagle watching. People come from all over the world because no matter how cold it gets, the water coming out of this roller dam is open. It never freezes. And so the eagles come here and they catch fish. And I would say that far off in that tree, it's too far for the camera to catch, that is a bald eagle and another one flying. I've already seen 4 eagles today aside from these, but it's a beautiful place. And, you know, maybe there's eagles in Iowa. Maybe we can debate. Maybe there's parts of the heartland that haven't been totally corrupted and turned into tribalists of one side or another. Maybe we can stand touching noses for a week at a time and never see eye to eye, as the famous Music Man line goes. But there are eagles here. There are eagles here. Let me tell you what this gal said and what I said. I said, I think Joni was very brave when she came out, not only to fight for women and the victims of sexual violence, but to admit that she herself had been a victim of sexual violence. And I said, and not only that, it was she that pushed forward into the United States Senate the investigation that led to the USA Gymnastics lady victims winning a $500 million settlement for being victimized by Dr. Larry Nassar. And then she pushed the investigation forward again, such that USA Gymnastics has been slated for total deconstruction. And the fact is, there's sex abuse at the very heart of it since 1978, when Marcia Frederick won the first USA gymnastics, the first world title by an American lady gymnast. And she came forward and said, yes, I was abused. She had Eastern Bloc Soviet-trained trainers that thought that it would be a good thing that the athletes would do better if they had been molested sexually. So this is very widespread. And I said to this young lady, and as a lady, her eyes glassed over. Her eyes glassed over, and she felt for those victims. And she knew that Joni, even though she was on the other side of the aisle, had been a mighty champion to unseat powers of authority. And I said, Joni did go to Washington, and she is making them squeal. And this is the real issue. Everybody wanted to take the stage last night, and I was there as an Iowa voter, as a caucuser. I was there in Des Moines at Drake University, where I was awarded a scholarship and very nearly attended. I went off to the Christian University in Oklahoma instead. I said, Joni did make him squeal. All those candidates wanted to talk about fine points. Oh, what about Iran? One candidate says, oh, we're going to step back 2 clicks. And another one says, oh, we're going to turn up the heat a couple of clicks on Iran. Oh, what about China? What about the tariffs? What about this? What about that? Oh, we're going to just increase this. And really, they were all patty caking with one another because all they want to do is uproot Trump. And the fact is, Trump has been reversing decades of bad policy pertaining to trade, where China has been taking us to the cleaners. And I know it hurt the farmers a little bit. You know, all this was just recently underwater. All of it. Worst flood ever. But the fact is, all of those candidates want the same thing, socialism for America, and nobody wanted to touch the real issue. The real issue being that there's widespread sex abuse, devil worship, and that pedophiles run the world. And you know who's in on it? You know where it started? Right there in Des Moines, West Des Moines, Iowa, 1982, with the original milk carton kid, the kidnapping of Joni. Gosh. Turned out to be organized kidnapping cults. It turned out to be devil worshippers. And you know who was in on it? The chief of police of West Des Moines, the Des Moines Register that ran the debates jointly with CNN. Who else was in on it? Robert Wadman, the chief of police of Omaha, Nebraska. Nick O'Hara, the head of the FBI branch office in Omaha, Nebraska, in charge of the whole region. And John Kerry and Bob Kerry. If you read the famous book by Nebraska State Senator John DeCamp, it's called The Franklin Cover-Up. And there's a whole chapter called Bobby and Me, which tells about Bob Kerry, the brother of John Kerry, both of them being pushed forward to the presidency, and how they were up to their eyeballs in the pedophile and devil-worshipping cults. So those are the real issues, and that's what nobody wants to know about. And who controlled the narrative and who ran the debate? CNN and the Des Moines Register, who've been implicated for the last 40 years for being involved in child sacrifice, child kidnapping, and devil worship and severe deviance. So I'm glad that young lady asked me the question, and I'm glad I got to tell her that we sent Joni to Washington, and she's been making them squeal. Now, one last thing. This says high water mark from the record flood in 1993. But you know what? This last year, the water was even deeper. The worst flood ever came in here to the downtown area, burst through the flood control barrier, and flooded the base of every building that you can see right here. And this is a lesson for this town. There's some eagles here, but you know what? Maybe they shouldn't have thrown out the very last of their prophets. Maybe they should have kept a couple, even if they didn't like them very much. I'm Pastor Sam, and we are the Gospel Gunslingers.